Greetings and salutations. It's David Duford here at davidduford.com, where I help insurance agents like you become top producing insurance professionals. And today you're here yet again for another one-on-one coaching call where I help insurance agents across the nation become top producers and help answer their burning questions as it relates to selling and marketing insurance. And today I have Miss Adrienne, right? Did I pronounce it right?
Yes, Adrienne.
Oh, Adrienne.
Right.
Okay. Well, Adrienne, thank you so much for being here today and volunteering to do this. And we were kind of talking a little bit before we hit the record button about what we're going to talk. So why don't you kind of jump in and describe to the audience what your question is, and I'll do my best to answer it.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me, David. So I've been an independent agent for about a year, and I see videos of you and other people as well. And I hear people say, mention they go in with a presentation. They do their presentation first. And I have to say, honestly, I don't even know what that quite looks like. So I want to ask you, tell me, please, what is your presentation and what's your opening going in and explaining products and what you do, please?
So let me do this. I'll answer that, but I'm curious to see what you are doing. So what would you describe your presentation would be right now?
Yeah.
So like through what a typical sales call would go like.
A sales call or in the home, you mean?
Yeah, presentation, in-home presentation.
Yeah, okay. So naturally I introduce myself. I show my license and what have you, and I explain that I'm an independent agent and these are the carriers I represent, and I show them the form in which brought us together and why I'm here and how they reached out. And then I usually ask them questions about their line of thinking or process of what led them to fill this out. And when I get stuck, I kind of explain the 6 reasons why people get life insurance. So I guess that would be my presentation. But I'm wondering if there's like...
Oh, Adrienne, there, you're back now.
Yeah, I know, I'm back. Sorry.
That's okay. Had a call coming probably, right? Okay, there you are.
Yeah. Okay, I'm back.
That's okay.
Thank you.
No
Sorry.
So last year you said you're wondering.
And I'm just, if there's like a visual aid, or are are there like props maybe that you bring in, or do you explain? Do you go into about the companies that you're representing, about the products?
Sure. So let me tell you what I teach my agents, and we're on the same page here. You're selling final expense,
please,
correct?
And mortgage protection.
And mortgage protection. Okay. This would work for either product, really. So I think, first of all, my approach to selling is consultative. Okay. So what that means is that I spend time up front figuring out if my prospect is a qualified prospect, somebody who meets the criteria to buying, or they're an unqualified suspect, meaning they don't meet at least one of the reasons for buying. I don't present to those people, because if you have need, want, health is good, and you got a budget that works, but you don't have a bank account, you're paid under the table, I'm not going to do business with them most of the time.
Okay. So you don't even waste your time.
Yeah.
Right.
Likewise, if somebody has, no budget and they're thrilled about buying life insurance, but they can't even afford something basic, I find a way to get out as quickly as possible. So I don't want to get too off of a tangent, making that important distinction. Only when I know that they meet the criteria that I have for buying do I transition into the presentation aspect. So I don't even talk, it's kind of weird to think about, but it works really well. I don't even talk about what I do until I know someone meets the criteria of buying. So I don't explain the difference, and this is where the presentation comes in. The difference between term, whole life, and guaranteed acceptance insurance until I know. And I don't even present pricing to them until I know that they fit the criteria for buying. So in essence, and then once I presented, I trial close, which means I test the waters to see if they're bought in to my product over my competition's. And once I know that, I got a pretty good chance at this point that they say, yes, I like it because it never goes up in price, never cancels because of age or health, whatever. That's when I move to the final step of the sales call, which is closing the deal, offering the 3 different sale, good, better, best deal, and then asking which one works best. So in short, my presentation starts just like yours, very similar: rapport building, introduction, getting them to relax so that, you know, you're not after their money, you know, that
Right.
you care because you care and you want to help these people out. Introducing yourself, who you are, why you do what you do, and why it matters to the prospect. And we can get all really granular here. Again, I'm just doing an overview.
Sure.
When I move to that, then I get to what I believe is the most important part of the entire sales presentation, which is the pre-qualifying and fact-finding section. I asked them, what were your thoughts and concerns when you requested the information? Why do you want life insurance? What would you want your life insurance policy to do for you? Do you have existing life insurance? Do you want to be buried or cremated? And then there's other, again, questions that build upon those questions. And the whole purpose of this section is to gather the information on what makes them tick. Why would I'm like, really, truly curious why someone would send one of these weird cards back, or while they're goofing off on Facebook, fill out one of these cards and have some stranger, you know, it's kind of interesting to me because there must be something going on. And I want to know, as what they're telling me, and this is why pre-qualification is so important, what they're telling me in the beginning is they're giving me the ammo to close them. Well, you know, the reason I did this because I'm not getting any younger. My spouse died a year ago. I saw how expensive it was. We've all had those calls. And you're digging at the emotion of what drives someone to buy. And you're not doing anything manipulative or aggressive. They're telling this all to you because you simply asked and you opened yourself up to that they're opening themselves up to you because you asked the question. But they're building their emotion naturally and interest in it. So then that's when I transition from there to the health questions. I ask about a bank account. We got a bank draft you. Again, I can go over the verbiage there. And then I get a budget range they can work with that's easily affordable. So at that point, I know, back to my criteria, I know what their need for insurance is, as well as their desire, their want. I know their health, it would fit, what their bank, if they got a bank, if they will allow a bank draft. And then lastly, if they can 100% confirm they can afford a budget range, whether that's high or low, doesn't matter, but they can. And that's the point where then I get into the presentation. So it's kind of a big, brief description of what I do. It's a track to run on. I do it every single time. It doesn't appear to be canned because I've done it a million times. But that's what everyone should have, is a distinct track to run on to get to the end point. So is there any questions about anything I mentioned?
Well,
we could go over?
I just want to say that a lot of what you said makes a lot of sense. And even though there are some nuances there that you mentioned that I don't do, and just some of them, I mean, I too try to get information from them, but I feel like I get information about things that don't necessarily have to do with this transaction right now, you know, what we're doing right now and why they reached out.
Can you share with me what you mean by that?
Well, of course you asked, I think it was just, I don't remember actually. I asked them how much they make during, in a year, for instance. But you worded it by saying, what's your budget right now? And, you said you want life insurance. What are you willing to put towards that? What feels comfortable for you? Now, I mean, it's just a little nuance of how much asking, which is more broad, how much do you make a year? That's not really narrowing it down as you just did, and say, okay, you want life insurance. And I also like just the difference between what you desire and what really reality.
Right.
Do you know what
Right.
I mean? Yeah, I want insurance, and yeah, I want a $1 million policy, of course. But
Yeah.
right now, let's just talk about what's really going to go on, and
Mhm.
so let's differentiating the different of want and of desire and
Yeah.
what's really, and so that was really important. Those were good takeaways. So thank you. Do I have any more questions? Um, yeah, I mean, what that looks like when, and I also see that just when you come in and you're knocking out immediately, um, the what's going to happen. I'm going to, draft your bank, and are you okay with
Yeah.
that and such.
Yeah.
So just on the back end of closing that,
Yes.
when they get they're still, anxious. They're still about not trusting perhaps. And, how do you break through that?
So I
How do
think,
you get past that?
yeah.
Am I,
Yeah. So I think to cover the first thing you mentioned about closing,
uh-huh.
traditional sales say that you've got to ask for the sale 6 or 7 times. It's a high
Okay.
pressure, high stakes event, the asking of the business. What I prefer to teach is that closing should be the least stressful part of the sale, because the essence of a good sales presentation. My father ran a multi-million-dollar chemical business, and he trained
Oh,
sales
great.
people. And what he said to me, he said, "Dave, all a sales presentation is overcoming objections," and that's true.
Yes, that is
Get
true.
a step further, and this is why I ask all those questions in the beginning. I think a good sales presentation is overcoming objections before the prospect thinks of them as objections. So this is why you ask all these questions. What do you want to do with your life insurance policy? What's
Hmm.
comfortable for your budget? Because by
Mm-hmm.
the time you get to the end of the sales call and you present the different options within their budget, what do they have to object to at this point? You've already covered every nuance, every potential objection, and they have basically said yes by omission. We've omitted all the options, so there's only one choice, which is one of these 3 options on the table. So I think closing should be relatively easy with a heavy pre-qualification oriented type of sales presentation. So, um, I think it's worth spending time going over that if you want to, because here's the thing: most agents I train, most
Yeah.
agents I've done consultations with, the biggest problem they have in their sales presentation, it's not closing, it's not presenting, it's pre-qualification and fact finding. They don't ask the good enough, detailed, tough questions up front. And I think it would be worth our time maybe going back and forth between like what questions I ask and explaining you why I do what I do, or I ask what I ask, so that maybe you can implement some of these. Because the better questions you ask, the better answers you'll get, and you'll find you'll sell more people because of it, and you won't spend as long.
Because you're diving deeper. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So now the best question to ask, you're already asking, which is great. So you ask, what were your thoughts and concerns when you sent back this card, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So make sure, word for word, what I just said, say it. You don't want to say, why did you send this card back? That's a little too flippant or
Right.
short. You
Okay.
want to know thoughts and concerns, logic and emotion. Okay. And so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so my question, Mr. Prospect, first question for you is, what were your thoughts, concerns when you decided to fill the card back, send this on Facebook? Doesn't matter what lead it is. It's the concept, fill in the blank, and just sit back and listen to them. Now, I'm sure you've had people who start spilling the beans, right? And they tell you their life story at that point.
Yes.
Have you ever had somebody who said, I don't know, I was just curious?
Absolutely. Which is,
What's your response to that?
I say, okay, that's fine. but obviously, something, you were curious for a reason. It's maybe something had happened. You heard a story, of somebody that maybe passed away, or, a
Sure.
family that wasn't able to provide, a proper burial. And I mean, there's usually, even just for being curious, there's a reason behind it. So, I just kind of
Yeah.
probe a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
That's good. That's good. On one hand, I like that. I actually like that because that's not what I do, but I'm going to tell you what I do, but you're sticking to the
okay.
emotion.
Yeah,
Why? Yeah, you're curious, but what caused,
there's
I know
something
you get these
behind that.
cards all the time. Why now? There's got to
Yeah,
be something.
exactly. Yeah,
And again, the whole reason people buy is based off of emotion. I mean, people justify their emotions, right? Like,
yeah.
oh, I don't want to
And
die and
it
leave a
couldn't,
burden. Yeah.
right. And it could just be I turned 50, and I figure
That's
it's
that
time for me to
dude, that's
do,
emotional for
something.
some people.
No, it is. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
You should have
Absolutely.
heard my wife when she turned 30.
Yeah.
Trust me, it was logically 30 years old, but it was highly emotional. Now,
So what do you do when they
yeah.
say, I was just curious?
So I say that's fine. What I've
Mm-hmm.
found, Mr. Prospectors, usually 3 different situations that the people I meet with are in. So let me go through these and you tell me which one fits you best. So the first
Okay.
situation is they have no coverage, and they know right now if something happened to them and they don't have insurance, their spouse, kids, family that's going to have to come out
Mm-hmm.
of pocket to bury you, and they don't want that. They know it's not good. The second situation is they've got some coverage, but they feel like with the prices going up, they need more coverage, or maybe they want to see if they can get a better price for the coverage they have. And then the last situation is they have plenty of coverage, but they want to get extra money to maybe leave a legacy, leave money to a grandkid, a kid, to just make their lives better when they leave. My question to you, Mr. Prospect, is out of these 3 situations, one being you have no coverage and you need it, 2, you need more or a better deal, or 3, you want to leave a legacy behind, which one fits you best? So here's why I do this. So the reason I do this is that it takes an initial kind of wishy-washy response. Well, I ain't getting any younger, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, like a
Mm-hmm.
non-response.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes them go into, it forces them to answer and place them in the one of 3 situations. Oh, I'm in situation 1, David. I don't have any coverage. Well, good. Now we kind of know where we're at, and we can start to build on the urgency and emotion. So how does it feel not having coverage? Or have you ever known anybody that died without coverage? So you can kind of piggyback off of that answer. If they say
Mm-hmm.
number 2, I've got some coverage, then you say, great. Who do you have your existing life insurance coverage with? Who is it
That's smart.
with? How much do you
Yeah.
have? What are you paying? Why do you feel this is too expensive? And let them kind of answer, let them take all the time. Go grab your policy. It's a great time to ask for the policy after you've asked those initial questions, to start doing a policy review then. And then if they say number 3, which in truth, number 3 is absolutely rare. I don't think I've ever had, I can count on one hand after more than 3,000 presentations where I had number 3 picked. But if they do say pick it, then ask them, what are they looking for? How much? Why is this important to them? So the reason we go from what were your thoughts, concerns, to this question, that we call this the 3-question routine, that's what I call it, is when you can't get a good response on that first question, because that forces
Right.
them to play their hand. Now, what if they don't say anything? What if they say, like, I don't really fit into any of those 3? Then the only thing I would do, I would say, great, that's fine. I'm just curious, you must have life insurance. Who is your life insurance with? I will attempt a conversation pattern where I'm trying to see if I can, sorry, spider on my desk, where I'm trying to see about possibly replacing the existing coverage. But if they're not going to budge there, I'm gone. Because if I can't establish need, desire, I can't get past somebody's barriers after I've rapport built it, and they can't even engage in my sales presentation, I am just,
Mm-hmm.
waiting for the dog to meow, like it's not going to happen. So why am I need to go find
Right.
someone who actually needs my help. And I'll just get
Right.
up, I'll put my hand out, I'll say, thank you for your time. It appears you're all set. Have a great day. And I'm out the door. So, but yeah, that's what progresses us to that point.
Okay.
Any questions about
Now,
that?
yeah, actually, well, this was
Okay.
something you had said a little while back. You said that you asked them, when you asked them about filling out the card and such, and what were their thoughts, and you said, what do you plan on doing with that? Why do you ask that question?
Oh.
And what's the thought process behind that?
Was the question, what do you want your life insurance to do for you? Is that
I guess, yeah. Yes.
Okay, that's one of the questions I ask after the first initial.
It's a good question, actually, but I want to know why you asked that and what you do with that.
Yeah. Let me clarify this. You mentioned nuance a while ago. These questions, you have to say it like I say it, because really the way you're supposed to ask, I may not have done this in question. What you really should say is, what would you like a new life insurance policy to do for you?
Okay.
What did I do?
That's a really good question.
I sold past the sale. What would you like your new policy to do for you?
Okay.
So I want them envisioning what did they want to accomplish with a policy, with their policy, with a new policy. Again, a new policy is better than their policy or a policy. It lets them visually see it better. But the thing is, the reason you ask that question is because it tells you what's driving them and motivating them. Okay.
Right.
So it allows me to figure out, well, I want to buy this because I don't want to be a burden to my family. I want to make sure I have enough money to take care of my final expenses. So when I'm buried, my spouse does. Those are the kind of answers you're going to get. You may get a story about someone who died that they knew that didn't have coverage, and they don't want to do that. Either way, it's an emotional response, right? And they get to, on top of that, envision themselves seeing the purpose of the policy fulfilled. And again, we want them to see them owning the policy. So it's a powerful question to ask.
Indeed. No, absolutely it is.
Now, one thing I'll do a lot, and notice all these questions are open-ended, right? I'm not asking, it's not a
one answer.
Yes, no question.
Right.
It's a I must explain myself question. Best question to ask at this point. I will follow up to that. What do you want a new life insurance policy to do for you question? I'll ask if I'm not 100% clear, and I'll ask either way. If I feel like I'm clear, I just want them to say what they want. So let me make sure I understand you, Mr. Prospect. Are you telling me you want to be buried or cremated? Why? And then they'll say, yes, I want to be buried. Why do you want to be buried instead of cremated? So I ask that just because I think it's a good conversation point. You don't have to ask that question, the why question. You can just say, okay, you want to be buried. That's fine. But the reason sometimes people get cremated is because they're like shocked at how expensive a burial is. Or they just don't
want to be too much.
Yeah. Or they don't believe in it. And that's fine. I don't care what their answer is so much. And my response to that is my follow-up response to that is going to be something like, are you aware of what the going rate is for whatever it is they're interested in? And then I'll give them firm numbers like, well, in East Tennessee where I live, you can get buried for around $8,000 to $10,000 today. 20 years from now, it's probably going to be a lot higher. So I'm planting the seed to get more than 8,000 or 10,000, right? I'm not pushing it yet. I'm just saying, hey, let's be aware prices go. And they'll all know because grandma and grandpa have been around. They remember when gas was 10 cents a gallon.
Of course.
And then same thing with cremation. You can get a direct cremation in East Tennessee for under $1,000, but most people have some service and some additional stuff. So I recommend $3,000 to $5,000 just to accommodate for the price difference. So the reason I go with a number, and I'm talking about numbers here, is because I want to match their desires of what it is that they're wanting with something that's grounded and based in reality. Okay. Because a lot of these people, they don't know what it costs to bury, or they have a vague understanding. So I want to be able to provide them the ability to match their desires with a number. Now, one thing I also like to do here, and stop and interject anytime you have questions. I'm just kind of going.
No, this is good stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to this, and there's a lot of psychology here that's really good, because this sets you up to close, and we'll talk about that later. But what you want to do here, one thing that's good to do too, is that I'm trying to think how I don't always ask this question, but I probably should. One thing that you want to do in this section is you're saying, well, the average is $7,000 to $10,000. Well, what if you're everybody in final expenses sat across the table from an 80-year-old and they're like, I need to be buried. I know it's going to cost me $10,000. I need $10,000. You're thinking it's probably going to be like $150, or it's going to be like, I hope I can sell this person. And you're sitting in a single wide. It's not exactly clean, and she makes $800 a month. It's like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get this. So what do? Again, planting the seed concept here is she might buy it. I'm not going to not offer it to her potentially, but I also want to begin to slightly sell the idea that something is better than nothing in this section. So what I mean by that is I'll say, look, most people, the average is $7,000 to $10,000 to bury. It might be higher than that if you live longer. But here's the thing. The worst thing that anybody could do at any time is die without any coverage. All funeral homes will tell you they would much rather deal with a family where even if they only had a couple $1,000s in a life insurance policy, at least that they have some starter amount to deal with. Because the truth is, funeral homes will not take a body without money anymore. It's hard to collect off of a dead person, Mrs. Prospect. You can probably understand. So I don't know what your situation is, your budget. We'll get to that, I promise. But I just want you to keep this in mind. If for some reason $10,000 is out of your budget, even if you could only afford $3,000 or $5,000, that's a lot better than nothing. And it will get the job started. It will help substantially. And again, I can't help but stress it, but it's a lot better than just having zero. Does that make sense, Mr. Prospect? So,
and it's a good point. And even sometimes, even when they can only afford, say, $3,000 or $5,000 today, but who knows, a year from now, their situation might be different, and perhaps they can, up the.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do that too.
No, you're right. No, I do that all the time. I'm like, I'll go back to that, right? Where I said, remember when we were talking about the something is better than nothing, Mr. Prost? Now, this isn't the close.
Right.
This is when I've offered them something, and they're just not sure about taking. They really want the 10, but they know they can't afford it, but they're not thrilled with 3, but that's what they can't afford. So I'll go back to it. I'll say, remember when we were talking about something is better than nothing. Good enough is good enough. Well, this is why you should buy the 3,000, because tomorrow is not promised. You are healthy enough today to qualify for this, but you know as well as any other person, probably better than most people alive, that life changes in a heartbeat, and we're all destined for the grave. And you don't have to die to not have insurance or get insurance. You can just develop diabetes, have a mini stroke, have a seizure. But today you have none of that, which is why you should lock in something today. Let's get you started with the 3,000. And like you said, I can come back in 6 to 12 months. You get used to this, you get comfortable with it. I'll be happy to drop in 6 to 12 months from now. I'll put in a note to call you. We'll see about adding more. Maybe there's something new that will be better priced, but at least get started with something today. Doesn't that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's good.
You're 100%
very good.
Right. And
thank you.
You have the obligation as the agent, and that's not. And remember, what was anything I said high pressure there?
Absolutely not.
Was I doing anything?
You were merely having a conversation with them that they requested, more or less.
And you're being their advocate. Okay.
Yeah.
Death, the conversation of death is not one even me as an insurance agent, I don't like openly talk about this stuff. It's a sensitive, emotional topic even for me. But
Mm-hmm.
you as the insurance agent play the important and uncomfortable role of reminding the people you sit with of reality and the fact that not that today, this second is the only time that's promised to you. And there is a reason you're here to do something about the inevitable. And even if that's not what you want, at least you can get what you can need or you can afford. So if you treat your objection rebuttal, like I would call that an objection rebuttal, in a way that speaks truth to the matter, you're building tension inside the prospect. You're helping them recognize and remind themselves of what's right, that protection matters, that something matters, that nothing is the worst thing you can do. And the truth is they've worked up to this point with nothing. And if you walk away, they still have nothing. And they're only getting older. They're only going to get sicker. And the price
It's not going to get better.
It doesn't get better.
It doesn't get better.
So anyways, yeah. So I think that was worth mentioning there since you mentioned that was good. So so way back to the questioning part. Are there, what else?
Yeah.
What else do you ask in that questioning part?
Sometimes if I feel things aren't, I'm just not quite feeling the need. I'm not getting the need out of them.
Right.
I start asking them about their family
Okay.
and whether they live nearby or not, or where they live. I feel that has, when people feel so confident that they're all set, I don't have insurance, but I'm all set, I'm okay. And it's like, okay, but I wonder what your family feels about that. Does someone live close by that they're going to be right here to, and then just kind of remind them they're not the only one. They'll be gone. The other people will be affected by this.
Right.
And, I don't think people quite, and as you said, it's a hard thing to talk about. It's a hard thing to face, and then to put money on it. It's not an easy thing.
Right.
But as agents, you have to just kind of be that person to follow, help them get from A to B to, now you're set. Now you're set.
What's your, and this is pulling a number out of the ethers, but what success rate do you have on those people who say, I don't have life insurance, my family will pay for it? Like people who are just kind of, I don't really care. Do you have a success rate turning them around to buy them? And if so, is it like 50%, 25%, less? Just curious.
What is my success rate of people who are all set and changing their mind? They're all set with no insurance.
Yeah, and then don't have insurance. I'm not talking about people who say, yeah.
It's low because there are people who it's low. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's low.
And I'm not calling you out on this. Don't get me wrong.
No, it's
there
by
are
all
people,
means. Tell me.
There are people, and this goes back to need. Well, need and want are kind of yin and yang. Like they're both the same side. They're the different sides of the same coin. But you can't. Here up in the South, we call it, you can't fix stupid. All right. And like, if I sit down with somebody and they say, yeah, they're flipping about it. Like you said, I'm all set. I don't need insurance. I'm not going anywhere. I think it's worth spending time to say, okay, let's walk through what happens. I get it. You're 100% right, Mr. Prospect. You don't need this. I get this. But let's kind of imagine for a moment if the following happened. And by the way, does this happen more with final expense or mortgage protection where you get these kind of people?
Mortgage protection for sure.
Yeah. I would figure being younger, you're more ignorant of reality. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got plenty more years to
Well, you
live. I
think
don't have to
you're
worry about it.
invincible. You think you're
Yeah.
invincible. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think with mortgage protection, you need to sell the need more than final expense. I think the nice thing about, oh, you there? Okay.
Are we up?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're here.
Okay.
I think with
Okay.
mortgage protection, I think it's absolutely vital to sell the need more than you do with final expense. Here's why. I think with final expense, you're dealing with 60, 70, even 80-year-olds. They all have lost loved.
Right.
You don't get that old and like not have lost your parents, your grandparents, sometimes your kids or your spouse. Okay. They have been reminded throughout
Right.
life that life is mortal. It's not permanent. And I think there's less need to sell the need there. But with mortgage protection, it's different. I think you're dealing with a group of people that are still young enough to not respect the realities of a transient, impermanent life, and you have to really connect the position they're in with what their ultimate end game will be. So I think if one thing's different that I would do more of in mortgage protection is that I would walk them through what would happen when they pass away. Here's what happens when so-and-so dies. So, or better yet, Mr. Prospect, you're married, you're working, you're doing great, your wife's working, things are obviously pretty well for you. Congratulations.
Life is great. Yeah.
Life is great. But have you ever imagined what would happen if you're running down the road and some moron is text messaging somebody? They run the red light, they fishbone you, and you're dead, lights out.
And it absolutely can happen, and to anybody.
Absolutely.
Right.
And what happens, Mr. Prospect, if that's you in that car that dies? What happens to your family tomorrow? Please explain to me. Put the onus on them. It's uncomfortable to talk to them like this because you're being a little pushy, but you're doing it there. You're not pushing product. You're pushing a concept, which you're trying to change hearts and minds. So do you tell me what happens when you die? Oh, well, that life insurance I've got through work will cover you. How much you got?
Perfect.
I got 50,000. Okay. So how much money do you make a year combined? Oh, about 100,000. So you got 6 months of money left. So when your wife has a 50,000 income, it goes from 100 to 50,000. You run through the 50,000 the first year. A lot of that's used for final expenses, paying for the medical bills. What happens to your family living on half the income? What happens to paying this mortgage? What happens to funding college? What happens to the lifestyle that your family deserves? How would you feel about that if you left them with that? And you can tell I'm almost confrontational about it.
Yeah.
But I think you have to be. You have to be.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it in a way where I care about the prospect. They don't want to hear what I have to say, but you have to challenge their perspective. And you have to get them to conceptually say, yeah, you're right. I didn't think about it like that. I never looked at it like that. You know, I've never imagined this situation. You know, like you want them to think, yeah, like they've kind of like took it all in and they're a little shell shocked, you know, because now
I hadn't thought of that.
Ben Feldman was a legendary salesperson with New York Life, and he calls it asking disturbing questions to the client. And it's great because the average person, finally, life insurance in general is a unique product. Nobody goes and blows a bunch of money on life insurance willingly. You know, it's not like buying a new car, a new purse, a new house. Like life insurance, it's not fun to buy. Okay. It's certainly not fun to pay it for years. And everybody generally puts it off until they're approached by someone like us to make them consider at this moment now why it's important. And more so again with the younger crowd. So I think you have to do that kind of line of questioning where you take them through what happens if their best laid plans, which I would say, hey, I can tell you've got everything made. You're doing great. But let's pretend for a moment if, you know, the car wreck happened? What happens then? And then let them tell you, because again, this is just me talking. I wouldn't say this, but, oh, you got your life so well put together. Explain. You're so smart. What happens when you lose half your money? What happens when your crappy employee insurance pays out and it's out in 6 months? What happens to the people you love? Go ahead. That's what I'm thinking, kind of.
Right, but that's
my delivery is a little different, but I'm kind of challenging them in the same way so that I can disturb them. And I don't mind if they get a little angry with me. I'd rather them be angry in a little way, or offended or upset, because this matters that much. This is that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And I'd be tell them, hey, I'm
You
sorry.
struck a chord. Yeah.
I'm sorry I offend you, but this is real. That's why I'm here today, because nobody wants to talk about this stuff. I do. And this is legit. You need to listen to what you can do. God forbid if whatever I described, I hope it doesn't happen, but it's very real and does happen. And then you transition. So, I guess that's how I would handle mortgage protection, to get them to be disturbed and they open their minds as best you can. So, and it's likely that spouse, usually it's one spouse over the other. One spouse feels positive towards it to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
The other one's negative, but maybe more dominant.
It's like good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe that spouse doesn't feel totally equivalent in making the claim. So, but yeah, that's why you're there. You know, that's why selling face to face won't ever go away in this business, because it's just different than buying a car or buying clothes. You know, this is such a weird, disturbing, thing to buy, because it deals directly with you being dead. So, okay. I don't mean to go off on all these different tangents. I hope it's helpful.
No, but I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, just the way you say things and bringing up certain things is very important, and it can really help even agents who've been at it, or have done, been out there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's always good to hear a different approaches, I feel, to something that you constantly do,
Right.
and to help you and things that in this business, it is the little things that you're saying, it is the little
Right.
things that you're bringing up, and and that will just change somebody's mind or get them to see the need.
Especially the
questions.
Especially the questions that you ask,
Mm-hmm.
and how you ask your questions are so important that you cannot and that's the thing. That's why I wanted to at least focus this training on that, because this is where for all you agents watching this recording, it's likely 8 out of 10 of you are falling short in how effectively you're asking open-ended questions to pre-qualify your prospect. Because not only you're pre-qualifying, you're building that urgency and desire for them to buy just by asking the questions, because there's no manipulation, but it's getting people like the fact that you take the time to think about intelligent questions to ask. They're like, wow, this person actually is interested in me. He's just not here to, throw up another salesperson, So that builds
Right.
and authority and trust. It all accumulates towards improving your odds to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Can I share with you one more thing before we end about the budget and kind of how I do that?
Absolutely.
I think this is really important. So when you present, let me ask you this. So when you're selling, let's say final expense, are you asking, do you have any knowledge of what's the client can afford until, I'm phrased this way. When do you do you ever ask for a budget range early on, or do you wait till the end of the sales presentation to go over price?
No, well, as I mentioned before, I usually just ask what their, I find out what for final expense, I find out what, how much annual income they might have.
Sure.
And then I break down what their payments are monthly of mortgage or rent
Yeah.
or, you know, condo
Okay.
fees or whatever. And then I kind of, figure, okay, so, and then, but to actually ask how much money, what is the budget for, you want this, you want this, you need this,
Right.
what kind of budget? I would do that. I like that you do that.
Yeah.
And I think, I guess in the beginning, or so I don't know. What do you do it in the beginning? Do you not?
Yeah. So let me cover this because
Okay,
there's a
please.
way to set it up
Okay.
where not only do you know what budget range they're comfortable with, but you also give yourself the highest odds of getting the most that you can out of the deal. Okay. So, and it's all on how you say it. So remember, this is in my pre-qualification section. We've
Right.
This is great because this has kind of gone perfect. So we've asked about what were your thoughts, concerns, open-ended questions, desire. We've established that. We've asked health questions, basic stuff. I've asked about.
Right.
I've
To
gotten
see what they
permission.
qualify for.
Yeah, I've gotten their permission to bank draft them. And by the way, real quick, what I say there is like, so I got 2 more questions for you, Mrs. Prospect. We've covered off script here. We covered need, want, and health questions at this point. 2 questions are the first one is how we do payment. And bottom line, look, this isn't the old days where the insurance man came up and pick up a premium like your grandma probably had. Nowadays, all the companies require us to do a bank draft. And we could do it out of a checking, savings, or direct express card or plastic card you got. Which one of those do you do? I don't need the money today. We just usually set it up the next month. So I go right in and just say, hey, look, this is what they require. Don't kill the messenger, right?
Right.
I'm not, don't get mad at me. This is just the way it is. The companies, and it's true for the most part. Some companies do direct bill, but I'm not going to sell them. So effectively, it's bank draft only. And at that point, I can address the concerns, which sometimes happen. What I find is if you do this long enough and if you present this the right way, which I used to kind of go around it in a backwards kind of way, but I just say, hey, look, this is the way it is. Which one, and I assume it, which one of these accounts do you do for the drafts, right? I don't ask them, can we draft you? I ask them, which one do you have, a checking, savings, or direct express? So that's that. Now the budget question. Let me go ahead and run through exactly what it said. So the final question I have for you, Mr. Prospect, is about price. And let me be totally upfront with you. 9 out of 10 people I see are just like you. They're on a fixed income. They draw disability. And the bottom line is there ain't no money tree out back, Mr. Prospect. They don't have all the money in the world. They cannot afford to buy a policy and then 6 months from now, when the air conditioning bill's through the roof, drop it because it was too much to begin with. That's a waste of your money. And usually they're like, damn right, Dave. I'm like, yeah, exactly. And the truth is, Mr. Prospect, the only policy worth having is the one that's easily affordable. Because that's the one that's going to be with you until the end, not the one that's too expensive that you got to drop, right? So here's my final question for you. If I can qualify you for a program today, would you be able to afford somewhere between $80 to $100 a month? Quiet, zip, let them answer. If they drop out of their chair and feign a heart attack, oh, it's too expensive, then I'll say that's fine, Mr. Prospect. It doesn't have to cost that much. What if I could find you another kind of program that was somewhere priced between $50 to $75 a month? Is that something you could afford today? And I worked my way down. I'll go down to $10 to $15 a month, okay? So let me explain the psychology here. All that stuff up front is me really selling them on I'm not going to take more money than I have to. Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to. I don't want to. I don't want you and I. Sometimes I'll tell them, look, if you take a policy out for me and drop it in the next 6 months, that's no good for me.
It's nobody wins. Nobody wins.
I don't want to charge back, you know?
No.
And so I'm speaking truth to these people.
Yeah,
But
I do that too.
I'm really trying my best to sell them on, look, I respect your budget. I respect the fact that you're on a fixed income. I respect the fact that money's tight. So now I've captured their trust. and I transition to this point to the main if-then question. If I can qualify for a program today, keyword today, not if I can qualify for today. We have to do business today. That's why I say today, not 3 months from now. Some people say, yeah, I can afford $100 after I pay my car off in 3 months, but they won't tell you that. They'll say, yeah, I can do $100, but in their mind they're thinking, yeah, that Ford bill's got 3 more months on it. And then when you go to close 20 minutes later, oh, you can't buy it today. Yeah. So this saves you some time. So if I can qualify for a program today, can you afford somewhere between $80 and $100 a month? So I start with a high range. If they say yes, I go and present it. If they say no, I do that little pivot. Okay, that's fine. If I can qualify for another program, can you afford 50 to 75? So I start high. And remember, I built up my credibility with the prospect, right? So I had the ability to ask high. And if they tell me no, boom, go to 50 to 75. Tell me no, boom, go to 25 to 40, and then 15 to 20 or 10 to 20. But this allows you to get the biggest pot. If you really have the guts to do this, you could ask, can you afford 150 to 200 a month? I can't say that straight. So, and most people will fall out of their chair. Yeah, $80 to $100 is fine. But by doing this, you expose yourself to the large deals without sacrificing losing the small deals. And that's because the opposite of that would be worse. Can you at least and this is why you don't say, what is your budget? Because that immediately in the mind of the prospect, they think, what's he trying to do? And they'll usually answer, well, it depends on what you get me. So you want to be feeding them the budget ranges and asking them for commitment. As opposed, and then also you don't want to start low and then high, because they may say, yeah, I want to do $20 a month, but they find out what they want is actually $80 a month. And now they're mad. You said this is 20. No, I said it could. Then you got to backpedal. But this is really important, because if I get them to say, yes, I can do 50 to 75, it's almost in the bag. Okay. I know they can afford 50 to 75. So I'll show them a 50. I'll show them a 70. I might show them a 90 just to say, hey, here's what a little bit more will do. And some people will take that 90, but at least I got a 50 or 75. And at least I know going into the close where their price point's going to be. And there's no stress, right? Because they told me what they could afford. I didn't force them to say that. So that's another important aspect to that pre-qualification stage.
Good stuff.
Any questions?
Thank you. I think that's solid. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very helpful.
Sure. Any final thoughts, concerns, questions, anything you want me to hit on? I think we've gotten close to an hour, but that's fine. I like doing this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it goes by fast, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. No, I'm good. Thank you. Okay. I really, there was some good nuggets in there. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Do you want a copy of this?
Sure.
Okay. So
that would be great. Thank you.
Let me end this and I'll explain kind of with the next step. So guys, if you're watching this on the recording, first of all, thank you to Adrian for doing this.
Thank you.
Getting on video and asking these questions and exposing. Not everybody can do it. So thank you so much for doing it. Second of all,
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys like what you see, if you want to join an agency that's passionate about training you to become top producers, that's what I do in my agency. It's very easy to learn more about what I do. You can go to davidduford.com, learn about all the different types of programs and offers that I have. I predominantly help agents sell final expense, annuities, some sell mortgage protection, and Medicare supplements, but most of my business is those first two items. You can learn a lot more again by going to davidduford.com/contact if you want to reach out to me. So Adrian, thank you so much. Stay on the line.
Thank you, David.
And we'll see y'all next time. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.